If you're waking up at 3 a.m. with your mind racing, feeling wired but exhausted at the same time, or you're suddenly craving carbs and chocolate after dinner, it may not be willpower at all. So don't blame yourself. There are two hormones that change after menopause, cortisol and ghrelin, that can quietly reprogram your sleep and hunger signals. And the good news is that there are 3 small shifts that you can start calming this cycle down within about 48 hours. So this all starts about age 45-ish. There are 2 signals that start quietly sabotaging your sleep and driving those late night cravings, and they're working together. So what are these 2 signals? So I use signal as another word for hormone because that's what hormones do. They signal the body or brain to do something, to take some action. So most people have heard of cortisol as the stress hormone, but what they don't know is that cortisol is supposed to follow a rhythm, a high in the morning to wake you up and low at night so you can sleep. But after menopause, this rhythm can get completely out of whack, and then you have ghrelin. Okay, so ghrelin, most people have never even heard of. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone, and it's released by your stomach to tell your brain it's time to eat. So here's the thing. These 2 hormones talk to each other all day and all night, but after menopause, this conversation gets seriously out of sync. And when cortisol stays high at night, it keeps ghrelin elevated with it. So when that happens, you end up wired at bedtime, hungry after dinner, waking at 3 a.m., and feeling like your body is completely working against you. So cortisol, your stress hormone, stays elevated at night when it should be dropping. And then the ghrelin, your hunger hormone, spikes at exactly the wrong times. By the time you notice that you're wired but tired at 10 p.m., raiding the pantry after dinner, or waking up at 3 a.m., this loop has been going on and misfiring for months. And here's what almost no one tells women about this stage of life. There are the 3 small shifts that can start calming the stress hunger signal in about 48 hours. So imagine going to bed feeling genuinely calm, sleeping through the night, and waking up without that gnawing hunger that makes you reach for the carbs, that cereal or that donut. And it's not about will, it's about restoring the signals that your body is desperately trying to send, balancing your hormones, in other words. Hi, I'm Dr. Manon Fielding, and after more than 30 years working with women's health, I'm going to show you exactly why you're stress eating, waking up at 3 a.m. and feeling hungry all day, no matter how much you eat. And I'm also going to explain why the usual advice, just relax, or just put less on your plate, or just reduce your calorie intake, almost always backfires for women over 45. So in our last episode, we talked about the insulin-leptin loop, how insulin spikes block leptin, your fullness hormone, from reaching the brain. And that's what drives your afternoon crashes and constant cravings during the day. But today we're looking at a different loop. Insulin and leptin mostly control what happens during the day, your blood sugar, your energy, and your metabolism. But cortisol and ghrelin control what happens at night, when you're under stress especially. And I don't know too many women who aren't under stress. So here's the loop. You're stressed, your mind is racing, you don't sleep well, you're more restless, you wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. This increases ghrelin, your hunger hormone. You either get up and eat a leftover piece of pizza or a donut or cake, or eat a carb-heavy breakfast the next morning, and the loop starts all over again. And your brain tells you you're hungry even when you've just eaten. So if the insulin-leptin loop drives the daytime cravings and fat storage, the cortisol-Grhelin loop drives your nighttime stress, your poor sleep, and your late night eating. And when both of those loops break down at the same time, as they can after menopause, women feel like their metabolism has completely turned against them. But the good news is this: just like the insulin leptin loop can be reset, the cortisol and ghrelin can also. And when you start restoring these signals, the sleep improves, the cravings calm down, and the whole system begins working together again. Let me give you an example. One of my clients, I'll call her Susan, was 54 and post-menopause. She told me, "I'm exhausted all day and ready to go to bed by 9 or 10 o'clock, but the moment I get into bed, my mind starts racing. And I can't stop thinking about food, chocolate, or chips, even though I just ate dinner." So she was also waking up around 3 a.m. almost every night. And when we looked at her patterns, it was classic. Her cortisol wasn't dropping at night the way it was supposed to. Stress and poor sleep and caffeine too late in the day were keeping it elevated. So that high evening cortisol was also keeping her ghrelin levels active and high. So that's why she felt hungry even after a full meal. Within 3 weeks of correcting and resetting her cortisol and supporting the ghrelin balance, she said, "I'm sleeping better than I have in years, and I don't think about snacking after dinner every night." So that's a big deal. That's what happens when these two hormones get back in sync. So now let's break this down, starting with cortisol. So cortisol manages your stress response and your daily energy rhythm. It should rise in the morning to wake you up and fall at night so your body can wind down. But after menopause, that rhythm can often get shifted. Progesterone, your natural calming hormone, also drops dramatically along with estrogen, and without it, your cortisol tends to stay elevated for longer periods of time, especially in the evening. And high nighttime cortisol causes 3 major problems: disrupted sleep, so you feel wired but tired; belly fat storage, cortisol signals fat storage around the midsection; and cravings for sugar and carbs. Your body thinks that it needs quick fuel to run away from the tiger, but there's no more tigers around. And then you have poor sleep that raises your cortisol again the next day, and the cycle continues. So I actually experienced this myself when I was younger, and after long days at the clinic, I'd find myself standing in the pantry looking for something crunchy or sweet, even though I'd already eaten dinner. And when I added a simple 10-minute wind down routine and moved my caffeine much earlier in the day, those cravings disappeared. That's when I realized it wasn't about willpower, it was that stress-related cortisol. So here are some common signs that may be part of your story. So how many of these fit you? You're wired but tired at night. You're waking between 2 and 4 a.m. You have stubborn belly fat. You do stress eating. You have racing thoughts at bedtime. So if you checked even 2 of those, cortisol is likely involved in some way. Now let's talk about ghrelin. Okay, ghrelin is released by your stomach and tells your brain it's time to eat. So normally it rises before meals and drops after eating. But when ghrelin becomes dysregulated, it stays elevated even after you've eaten. You finish dinner, and 30 minutes later, you're back in the kitchen. You rarely feel fully satisfied. So you may even wake up hungry in the middle of the night. And the biggest driver of ghrelin imbalance is poor sleep. So there was a classic study from the University of Chicago Sleep Lab that found that after just 2 nights of poor sleep, ghrelin increased by 18 to 28%. That's quite a bit. And the leptin dropped. So hunger increased significantly by 24%. So that's just with 2 nights of disrupted sleep. And it's often during menopause from hot flashes, stress, and high cortisol. So ghrelin ends up staying elevated all day, and your body behaves as if it's starving. And cortisol just makes it worse. So stress raises cortisol. Cortisol disrupts sleep. Poor sleep raises the ghrelin. Ghrelin drives the hunger and keeps you awake. That's the vicious cycle. So signs that ghrelin may be part of your pattern is you're hungry between meals. You rarely feel satisfied after eating. You're constantly grazing or snacking all day. You get hangry if your meals are delayed. You wake up hungry at night. Okay, so in small amounts, ghrelin can actually help initiate sleep. But when it's chronically elevated from stress and poor sleep, it keeps you awake and hungry at the same time, and the loop needs to be reset. So let's talk about how we can reset this loop. So most women start seeing improvement within days. Okay, you have the 10-minute wind down routine. This signals your nervous system that it's safe to rest so cortisol can drop. So dimming the lights at least an hour before bed. Turning off all screens 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. Taking some slow breaths, at least 5 slow breaths. Inhale at 4 seconds, exhale 6 seconds. You want to exhale longer than you inhale, and that stimulates the vagus nerve or the calming nerve. Doing some gentle stretching or light yoga. Cool, dark bedroom. So the light stresses your nervous system, so the darker your room is, the better it is to sleep. Dim your lights, calm your nervous system, the melatonin rises, and your cortisol level will fall. So one client texted me on day 4, I fell asleep in 10 minutes and I haven't done that in years. What else can you do? Stopping caffeine as early as possible in the day. You might not even realize that you're taking in caffeine, which can not only come from your morning coffee, but afternoon Coca-Cola, any kind of chocolate has caffeine, tea, which is lower in caffeine, but it still contains enough to affect women in menopause. All right, caffeine blocks your natural sleep signals and it keeps cortisol elevated. So if you want to sleep at 10, your last caffeine should be at 2, or even better, before 12. So caffeine has a long half-life, meaning that it can stay in your body and affect your sleep long after your last cup. And when I moved my last caffeine earlier in the day, my sleep definitely improved within a week. Another thing that really helps is eating 30 grams of protein at breakfast. And this is really a powerful thing because it affects a lot of your hormones. Protein is the strongest natural suppressor of ghrelin. Eating protein in the morning stabilizes your hunger hormones for the entire day. So example of 30 grams is you have 3 eggs and some cheese, Greek yogurt with a scoop of protein powder, salmon or chicken, 4 ounces, and the protein stimulates these other neurochemicals that are natural appetite suppressants, the same hormones that are targeted by drugs like Ozempic. So women who eat 30 grams of protein at breakfast showed a dramatically fewer cravings throughout the entire day. So let's talk about some bonuses here. So for cortisol, they find a big improvement when you get morning sunlight within 30 minutes of waking. So that could be a little walk outside or just sitting outside, reading the paper. Daily walking in nature is very helpful. Avoiding any intense workouts late at night. And then for ghrelin, a bonus, consistent meal timing. Fiber at every meal. 7 to 8 hours of sleep, because sleep is the most powerful regulator of this hormone ghrelin. So if this cycle has been going on for a while, I'm going to give you a few supplements that can really speed up your reset and help a lot. So the ones that give the biggest bang for the buck and that have the strongest human evidence for lowering cortisol are ashwagandha and phosphatidylserine. So ashwagandha is one of my all-time favorites. I recommend it for so many things. In 2019, they did a study on ashwagandha and it lowered cortisol and improved sleep with a 600 milligram dose working the best. Second, for people who feel especially that wired but tired feeling, phosphatidylserine is another standout. In 2004, German stress study, 400 milligrams significantly lowered cortisol surge from acute psychological stress. And that's why I especially think of it for people who wake at 3 a.m. with a racing mind or before you go to bed. And thirdly, to improve sleep quantity and quality, magnesium glycinate is still one of my favorites. And when sleep improves, your ghrelin levels will improve. So in 2012, there was a study published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences, and they found that taking 500 milligrams of magnesium every day for 8 weeks significantly enhanced the amount of sleep time, the deep sleep, and improved morning awakening, because it also improved melatonin levels, which is really important for regulating sleep of when you're supposed to fall asleep, and it lowered cortisol, improved insomnia in adults. So the best magnesiums for sleep include magnesium glycinate, taurate, and threonate. And if you want more information about magnesium, see my video on this topic. It gives you a lot more detail. So the 3 most important potent supplements for this loop that we talked about are magnesium, ashwagandha, and phosphatidylcholine. Now in the big picture, how does this affect our aging? So correcting cortisol and ghrelin does more than improve sleep or reduce our cravings. High cortisol accelerates aging by breaking down muscle, increasing inflammation in our body, and disrupting other hormones, also weakening our immunity. When these hormones rebalance, you're not just sleeping better, you're protecting your brain, your metabolism, and your long-term health, because your body wants to heal. So if you want stable energy, restful sleep, and normal hunger signals, it just needs the right cues. If you'd like the full system, including the weekly trackers, all 10 hormones in this series, then take the hormone quiz that I put in the description, and you'll discover your top 2 hormone priorities and gain access to our full midlife hormone balancing system that's inside the Holistic Hormone School. The next episode is going to cover thyroid and testosterone, the metabolism and muscle connection. So if you struggle with fatigue, thinning hair, or difficulty building muscle, you don't want to miss this one. All right, so let me know in the comments, what's the biggest issue for you? Is it the 3 a.m. waking, stress eating, or constant hunger, or all of the above? I read every comment. Glad you could make it today. Namaste.